The cold metal of the cockpit pressed against Ethan's skin as he slowly regained consciousness. His head throbbed. His vision was blurry. The sharp scent of burning wires filled the air, mixing with the faint, unfamiliar fragrance of something alien. His spaceship had crash-landed. Again. Groaning, Ethan unbuckled his harness and pushed himself up. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting eerie red glows across the wreckage. Sparks crackled from the broken control panel. Smoke curled in the air, making him cough. He turned toward the shattered window. What he saw took his breath away. A vast, glowing forest stretched into the distance under a sky unlike anything he had ever seen, deep violet, streaked with swirling bands of silver clouds. Towering trees with bioluminescent leaves pulsed with soft blue and green light. Strange floating orbs hovered above the ground, drifting like fireflies, casting an eerie, ethereal glow over the misty landscape. This wasn't Earth. This wasn't anywhere he recognized. Ethan reached for his belt and felt the small crystalline artifact tucked against his hip. He pulled it out, watching as it shimmered softly, as if reacting to something in the air. It was the reason he was here. Before his ship lost control, before the alarms started blaring, he had found this relic hidden in the ruins of an abandoned space station. He didn't know why, but he had the gut feeling that it was important. Now, stranded on an alien world with no way home, Ethan had only one choice: survive, and find out why fate had led him here. A rustling sound. A sudden presence. Ethan spun around, his muscles tensing. His eyes darted through the glowing forest, scanning for danger. Then he saw her. Leaning against a massive rock, barely holding herself up, was a figure, tall, graceful, but wounded. A woman. No, not just a woman. An alien. Her skin shimmered like polished silver, catching the soft glow of the bioluminescent trees. Her long hair, flowing like liquid metal, cascaded over her shoulders. Her armor, sleek and futuristic, was dented and scorched, evidence of a recent battle. Despite her injuries, she carried an air of strength, of resilience. Then their eyes met. Golden. Her eyes burned like twin suns, piercing into him with intensity. Ethan felt like she was searching his soul, measuring him. For a long moment neither spoke. The only sounds were the hum of distant creatures and the faint crackling of his ship's damaged systems. Then her gaze dropped, to the crystal in his hand. Her expression shifted. Suspicion turned to something else. Recognition. You! Her voice was soft but carried weight, as if the word itself was a prophecy. You hold the key. Ethan tightened his grip on the artifact. The key to what? She took a shaky step forward. Even injured, she moved with deadly grace. To survival. Her words sent a chill down his spine. Because somehow, he knew, this was only the beginning. A deep, unnatural hum filled the air. The ground trembled beneath Ethan's feet. He looked up, his breath catching in his throat. A massive black vessel descended from the sky, cutting through the violet clouds like a blade. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, sleek, insect-like, its surface pulsing with glowing red veins as if it were alive. The air around it shimmered with energy, distorting reality like a heatwave. Then they emerged. Figures, tall and imposing, stepped onto the ground with mechanical precision. Their armor was dark, fused with living tissue, giving them a grotesque, unnatural appearance. Their glowing red eyes locked onto Ethan and the alien woman. They moved in unison, their bodies humming with power, a chilling blend of machine and flesh. The tallest among them stepped forward. A leader. Its clawed fingers twitched as it pointed at Ethan, its voice a harsh rasp, distorted and unnatural. The crystal. Give it to us. Ethan felt the weight of the artifact in his hand. He had no idea why it was so important, but every instinct screamed that handing it over would be a mistake. Beside him, the alien woman struggled to stand. Her breathing was shallow, but her golden eyes burned with determination. She barely managed to whisper one word. Run! Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed her arm, pulling her forward as the first blast of energy scorched the ground behind them. Ethan gritted his teeth as he pulled the alien woman forward. She was strong, but her injuries slowed her down. Behind them, the pursuers moved with terrifying precision, their mechanical limbs gliding over the forest floor with eerie silence. A crimson blast shot past Ethan's head, searing through a nearby tree. The trunk glowed red-hot for a moment before exploding into embers. They were gaining on them. Then, the crystal pulsed. A shockwave of energy ran through Ethan's body, and suddenly, his mind filled with an image. An ancient gateway. Towering, covered in glowing symbols, hidden deep within the ruins of this planet. A way out. He didn't question how he knew. He just knew. "This way!" he shouted, gripping the woman's wrist. She hesitated, but something in his voice, his certainty, made her follow. Blaster fire ripped through the bioluminescent plants around them, sending bursts of neon-colored spores into the air. The creatures were closing in fast. A steep ravine appeared ahead, with a narrow, moss-covered bridge stretching across. The gateway had to be on the other side. Ethan didn't slow down. He sprinted toward the bridge, heart pounding. One shot. One wrong step. And they were dead. Ethan and the alien woman burst into the clearing, their breath ragged from the chase. Towering before them, half buried beneath tangled roots and creeping vines, stood the structure from Ethan's vision, an enormous stone archway, covered in glowing, ancient symbols. It looked impossibly old yet alive. The symbols pulsed softly, as if they were waiting. The woman staggered forward, placing a trembling hand against the cold stone. A deep, resonant hum filled the air as the symbols blazed to life, bathing the clearing in shifting golden light. "This is it," she whispered, her voice laced with something Ethan had not yet heard from her: hope. But then, a metallic clang. They turned. The hunters had arrived. The armored beings moved in silently, surrounding them in a perfect circle. Their red eyes glowed like molten steel, their weapons primed. Their leader, a towering figure with a skeletal faceplate, stepped forward. "You cannot escape," it growled, voice distorted and unnatural. Ethan clenched his fists, gripping the crystal. He looked at the alien woman. She was no longer leaning against the gate in exhaustion. She was standing tall, her golden eyes burning with defiance. They weren't running anymore. Ethan's grip tightened around the crystal as a surge of energy pulsed through him. It was like holding a storm in the palm of his hand, wild, untamed, but somehow his. He didn't understand the artifact's full power, but one thing was certain. It was theirs to protect. Beside him, the alien woman stood tall, her golden eyes burning with determination. She raised her weapon, its blade humming with lethal energy. "We fight together." The moment hung in the air, then chaos erupted. Ethan dove to the side as blaster fire rained down. He returned fire, dodging strikes, his movements fueled by instinct and adrenaline. The alien warrior moved like a dancer, every motion precise and deadly. Her blades sliced through metal and flesh alike, sparks flying with each impact. The hunters pressed forward, relentless. Ethan felt exhaustion creeping in, his muscles burning. They were outnumbered. Overpowered. Then, the crystal in his hand flared to life. A shockwave of pure energy burst from his body, sending the hunters flying. The ground trembled. The very air shimmered. The gateway roared to life. A swirling vortex of cosmic power erupted within its frame, a doorway to the unknown. The hunter's leader, undeterred, lunged one last time, only to be met by the alien woman's final strike. Her blade pierced through his core. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Then, as their leader collapsed, the remaining hunters hesitated. Their glowing eyes flickered, and in silent agreement, they turned and vanished into the shadows. Ethan and the woman stood side by side, panting, their bodies covered in sweat and stardust. They had won. But the journey was far from over. The gateway pulsed with energy, a swirling vortex of light and stars stretching beyond the horizon. It wasn't just a door, it was a path to something greater. Something unknown. Ethan stood before it, catching his breath, feeling the heat of battle still lingering in the air. His heart pounded, not just from the fight but from the realization of what came next. The alien woman, still gripping her weapon, turned to him.